Have you ever wondered about the archbishops' names or what Pandora's connection to Flugel is? In this video called Pandora Named the Archbishops, I'll go over Pandora's connection to the witch cult and most importantly, Pandora's old relationship with Flugel the Sage. It's common knowledge nowadays that Tappei has named the Sin Archbishops after stars, and likewise he has named the Witches of Sins after spatial objects such as asteroids or meteors. With that said, the Witches of Sins names also correspond to numerous deities and gods also, so it could be either one or the other. So to actually start the video, I need to talk about Tappei's stance when he names characters. In the early question and answers, Tappei has specifically stated that he comes up with the names of most characters on the spot. This includes the royal candidates. A few notable examples is Anastasia's name, since it sounds posh. This naming sense also extends far beyond the reach of royal candidates and into the general characters such as Reinhard's family name or Wilhelm's name. Of course, the only characters he names specifically for the plot are the important ones, such as the Sin Archbishops. This now goes into the actual theory, the idea that Pandora named the Archbishops. To understand this, we need to look firstly at Pandora and then to the Archbishops. We know that Pandora, despite being a witch of sin, has some form of relationship to the witch cult. People such as Regulus Cornelius, the Sin Archbishop of Greed, who is a high-ranking member of the witch cult, addresses Pandora with honorifics, such as calling her Pandora Summer. In the Arc 4 flashback, after Zeus absorbs the witch factor of Sloth, Pandora also grants him the seat of Sloth due to his dedication. Only someone who has a greater rank than a Sin Archbishop would be able to do such a thing. Now that we've established that Pandora is most likely the highest ranking witch cult member and most likely leads the witch cult, let's now look at the actual names of the archbishops. This theory follows a basic premise. High-ranking members of the witch cult are given star names by Pandora, just like how she can grant people a seat of sin, like how she gave Zeus the seat of Sloth. She can also bestow a name to them, which they will then use. This actually makes sense when you look at most of the archbishops in question. For example, in the Arc 4 flashback with Fortuna and Zeus, every character calls Zeus by his actual name. In fact, even Beatrice calls him Zeus in Season 2, Core 1. However, the only character that calls him by his star name is in fact Pandora, and of course we know that Betelgeuse's name is a reference to the star Betelgeuse, which actually does exist in our world. Of course, the fact that his name is a misspelling of the actual star is another topic for a different video, and there is a mystery behind that, but we do know that his name is named after a star. You can also see this example with the differing names with the other Sin Archbishops. Another good example is the Sirius equals Fortuna theory, which I've actually made on my channel, which I recommend you go and watch. It's the idea that Fortuna is actually Sirius, the Sin Archbishop of Wrath. Now what's really interesting is that Fortuna was her original name, and after becoming an archbishop she was bestowed with a star name, the name of Sirius, which was most likely given to her by Pandora. We can also see this example with Capella. She has the same exact name as a royal princess called Emerada Lagunica. Assuming that Capella Emerada Lagunica, the Sin Archbishop of Lust, is the exact same person as the Princess Emerada Lagunica, a formal royal of Lagunica, then the only difference between them would be the name they possess. Of course, the only addition to her would be her new name, which is a star name, which implies that someone has given it to her after she became an archbishop. The Gluttonies also share different star names as their family name. They are the only archbishops which have a star name as their last name rather than their first name. Again, this implies that they were given star names as their surnames due to the fact that they're all siblings and it's unique to them. So some of you might be asking, what about Stridvalakia, the previous Sin Archbishop of Pride? He doesn't have a star name. Well, I disagree. Stride does in fact have a star name, however as stated the star names are like a title. Stride is in fact described as someone who doesn't follow orders or like being told what to do. He thinks greatly of himself and he mocks others. Does that sound like a person who would take a new name after being told by someone like Pandora? Definitely not. Again, it makes sense after all because he is Pride. In fact, if we move further on with this train of thought, we can look at Ao. It's no surprise that the common theory is that Ao is in fact the new Sin Archbishop of Pride. We know that he knew several archbishops. He also tried to speak to Regulus during Arc 5 via a communication mirror. The Barriel Manor also has a constant lingering witch scent, which could make sense if Ao had a witch factor. Of course, Ao's full name is actually Aldebaran, which is the name of a star. However, like with Stride, he does something differently. He doesn't use his full name and doesn't like being called by it. Every time Priscilla calls him by his full star name, he states not to call him that. Again, like Stride, he rejects that title. He rejects that name, which is prideful. Hopefully, after going through most of the archbishops, I've made a case to why the star names are like titles which Pandora bestows upon people. So let's actually talk about Pandora and her relationship to Flugel. In the ReZero world, we are informed by Subaru that the stars of the ReZero world are not the same as Earth's. We find this out in Arc 6 when Subaru completes the first trial of the Pleiades watchtower, and we also see evidence of this in the Memory Snow OVA where Subaru is pointing at the stars and all of the characters have no idea what he's talking about. Subaru also states that very few people would have been able to solve the trial. Of course that makes sense because the only people that could have solved the trial of the Pleiades watchtower were the people that were originally from Earth, of which there are currently 4 in the series. They are Subaru, Ao, Hoshin of the Wastes, and Flugel the Sage. So since the only way the people of the ReZero world would know about the stars of Earth is if they were directly told by the people who were isekai'd. Furthermore, Aldebaran and Subaru weren't in the world 400 years ago, which is when the witches roamed the earth. The only 2 isekai characters that were present in the ReZero world was Hoshin of the Wastes and Flugel the Sage. We know that Pandora also operated during the time of the witches since Echidna knew her as stated in Arc 4. So if Pandora was able to learn about star names from someone, which she then went on to name her archbishops after, there's only one possible candidate she could have learned them from, and that is Flugel. It's highly likely that Flugel and Pandora met at one point and had some form of relationship. During this time, Flugel talked about the stars and constellations, and Pandora became enamored with them. After all, in Arc 6 we found out that Flugel's trial was about stars and constellations, and we also know that he named Shula himself personally, which is the only other character in the series apart from Subaru which has a star name, not counting the Sin Archbishops. Pandora, after learning about the stars from our world, then went on to lead the witch cult. Another interesting comparison is that we know Flugel had the sloth witch factor, and after Juice absorbed it, Pandora was stated to be in love with Juice. Does this remind you of anyone else? This is the exact same idea that Sirius says to Subaru. Sirius loves Subaru since one day Beetlejuice will be reborn through him. Maybe that's why Pandora was overwhelmed with love when Juice absorbed the witch factor. She saw it as Flugel being reborn one day, and to help with that plan, she wants to assemble the archbishops and give them star names as they remind her of Flugel, and eventually, one day, Flugel would be reborn through them, through their witch factors. Anyways, that's the theory, and it's an explanation of Pandora's knowledge of the stars from Earth. Let me know what you think and if you have any other ideas. Anyways, thank you for watching.
Hey guys, quick note from me, the editor. Yeah, Jake actually has someone who edits his videos. I mean, sometimes. But anyways, I'm Facepalm. You can check me out on YouTube if you like what I did. I rarely post, but that doesn't matter. Just go there. Just go. And make sure to like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.